Upgrades certainly worked for them today, as a slippy bottom for Hamilton secured a P6 and a P7 for the Brackley-based team ahead of their home race. Who knew side pods could work that well? Just ask Red Bull. Welcome to episode 303 of Grid Talk. Today we are here to discuss qualifying for the British Grand Prix. My name is Tom Downey, and joining me we have Jawad from the Hit the Apex podcast.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, sir. We have my very own boo, Tom Horrox, also co-host of this show and host of Monkey Seats.
Hey, great to be here, especially for this particular qualifying review.
Oh yes, this is going to be good. And then finally, we have engineering marvel Owain Medford.
Hello.
You look very surprised there, mate. Just before we get into this episode, we must thank our sponsor for today's episode, Bet Online. So Bet Online is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. Bet Online continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the websites or use your mobile to sign up today and get in on the action. Please remember to use the promo code BLEAV, that is BLEAV, for your 15% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. Also, just before we begin, if you enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you're one of the 70% of people who are not yet subscribed to the channel, please consider helping us out with a like and a subscribe. Also, be sure to follow us on all our socials with the new handle at Grid Talk UK, and that includes this new trend thingy or threads or whatever it's called that Zuckerberg's come out with. Don't ask me; I'm not popular, so I couldn't tell you. Where you can stay up to date with all the latest news from the show. So now that admin is out the way, let's have a chinwag about qualifying for the 2023 British Grand Prix. So on the face of it, you'll look at it and you'll see, oh well, the match has happened P1. Whoa, what's it? What else? And it's like, well, no, hang on. If you ignore that and we just dissect what happened, we'll actually start at the back of the grid. So, Tom, my condolences. I'm going to give you Haas because we need to talk about them quickly because they exist. K-Mag was P20. He conked out at the end of Q1 with a suspected oil pressure issue. And then Hulkenberg was P11, just missed out on the top 10. Not very much a day of mixed fortunes for them, and probably not setting them up best for a Sunday race.
No, I think probably the drying conditions and the red flag from Magnussen has actually inadvertently contributed to Hulkenberg's failure to get out of Q2 as well. With the slight delay in the session, it just meant the climatic conditions changed a little bit more. The track was getting quicker and quicker throughout the entire session, and it was always going to be last across the line. And I just think that potentially that has inadvertently caused or certainly contributed to that situation transpiring. The Haas is a very quick qualifying car, and they failed to get into Q3. I can't see that leading to anything but a backwards progress in the race. If you see something strange happening with safety cars and red flags and climate, the climate itself doesn't look particularly clear for tomorrow. It's certainly on the edge for weather. So certainly Haas have got reason, to, if they can react quickly to changes, they can get something out of the race. But with Magnussen causing that first red flag and causing a bit of chaos when things seem to be just starting to settle down, it's their impact on the session is far more in what they didn't do rather than what they actually did. So yeah, long afternoon. I fear for Haas, but yeah, there's certainly hope for something if the cards fall their way anyway.
Yeah, as we've seen lately, they do seem to have a habit of going backwards, and it's not like K-Mac can go much further backwards. But yes, not an ideal start to the weekend for them. Just looking ahead a little bit, not much further. We have the AlphaTauris. So, Owain, the AlphaTauris, they qualified. Oh God, where did they even qualify? Yuki Tsunoda P17, Nick De Vries for once not popping at the table. He was actually P19, so at least his starting position starts with a 1 and not a 2 in the bottom half of the table. Do you think they can do anything tomorrow?
I honestly don't know. I think Tsunoda can. I think that's the sort of thing. Like this is he's shown himself time and time again to be able to get up into decent positions. But I think the problem is that De Vries is there. And I can't answer your question and say can they both do anything and do well, because De Vries is there. I don't see him going very far forwards. I mean, I think it's pretty poor showing and qualifying, to be honest. Not even, there was clearly, like, in that session there was clearly a sort of maximum time, and they're not too far away from it. But unfortunately, I think they've been a sort of they weren't. They probably got a bit hampered and by the fact so far back. And it's the problem is, I think, that their best hope is that we have a sort of similar scenario to last year, and that the only way that they're going to go forward, De Vries particularly, is going to be accidents or other people tangling and having bad races. And I don't think that's not where you want to be racing. I think the AlphaTauri it's just maybe hasn't taken a step in the same way that all a number of other cars have.
Yeah, and De Vries needs to remember it's not himself who needs to have the accident, it needs to be somebody else. So, speaking of drivers who have had accidents here in the past, Alfa Romeo, that's a really bad segue, I do apologise. Alfa Romeo, obviously, Jawad Yaqub, he qualified P18. His teammate Valtteri Bottas qualified P15, got through to Q2, but conked out with some form of issue. We don't know what it was. Looked electrical, could be anything with these cars. Jawad, do you think they could do anything tomorrow, or do you think, as we've talked about so much already on this show, and I appreciate this could be a pretty brief answer for you, do you think they're sort of just stuck in limbo until the Audi money comes in 2026?
Yeah, pretty much. They can only count on the odd occurrence where they end up further up the grid than they should be, and they will score a point. But I don't think they're going to do anything special tomorrow. There is potential that Joe, unfortunately, could get a grid penalty. He is being investigated, or the stewards are taking a look at an incident between him and Ocon at Maggots and Beckett's where Ocon was impeded. So poor Joe may end up starting from the back of the grid. But it will be good, like you say, to get some racing laps under his belt here. Unlike last year, unfortunately, that accident, which is what he was primarily remembered for, if you watch Drive to Survive and all that. But hopefully they can keep it clean and just bring both cars home for the race. And as for Bottas, who knows what the problem was, because Magnussen had a issue with his Ferrari power unit. Could have been similar for Bottas as well. So I think we did say in the live chat, it's not a good day to be a Ferrari customer.
No, it seems like quite a painful day to be a Ferrari customer. Just very quickly, just to update you, because obviously we're recording this live. Nick De Vries got flagged for an unsafe release during, well, it would be Q1 because he got knocked out, obviously. AlphaTauri have been fined €5,000 for an unsafe release on Nick De Vries. So De Vries himself is not being impacted by that, other than potentially out of his wallet, but I'm sure he can cope. So for anybody wondering, listening to this, and what about the unsafe release? It's a team fine, which is something which I agree with, actually, but that's a topic for another show. So, still talking about Q1, Sergio Perez. Tom, go on.
Well, don't know why you came to me for Sergio Perez, honestly.
I have no idea, mate.
He's definitely channeling his inner Scott Speed here, being a Red Bull driver. Was it 5 in a row without getting to Q3 now? I don't know the stats around it, because in myself, I only just got in time to do this podcast. So I've not been had a chance to properly dive into the figures, but believe me, I will be. I can't think of any Red Bull driver who has failed to get into Q3 in this many sessions in a row. You'd have to go back some way to find a Red Bull driver that didn't get into Q3 this many times in a season. And this is the most dominant Formula One car of all time, in my opinion, anyway. I certainly believe that. Now, it would be very easy to just pile in on Sergio Perez and just really, just say that, he's not worth saving. He should be dropped. Get Daniel Ricciardo in there, Liam Lawson, whatever you want to say. But I don't think he can take full blame for today. I think that Red Bull do need to take some responsibility, whether it was Perez that made this call or not, but whosever idea it was to sit at the end of the pit lane for 9 minutes, going out on stone cold tyres with 3.5 minutes left in the session, when he could have potentially got 2 laps in. They said themselves that when he crossed the line, he had time for another lap. Now, obviously, he wouldn't have had the right battery charge and everything, but if he'd have gone out front of the queue, that's fine. Go around for his lap, start to put the tyre pressure, do another warm-up lap, and then be the last across the line. We all saw how much that track was ramping up, and that was the only thing that was ever going to happen. As soon as I saw Perez at the front of that queue, I was like, he's going out. I can't believe it. He's going out. And I honestly thought that Hamilton was going out as well, but I'm sure we'll come on to that later anyway. But I was absolutely convinced that he was going out as soon as I saw him on the front of that queue, and sure enough, that was it. But Red Bull, they should have been on top of that, and that session was always going to be restarted. 3.5 minutes is twice as long as you need, or just under twice as long as you need to get round. There was plenty of time. He didn't need to be front of the queue. He just needed to be not last, because whoever was last across the line was going to be putting in the most competitive times. That being said, he has equally got, as I said, the best car on the track. So that's got to be worth 0.3 of a second at least. So it's still bad that he's gone out, but I'm not as livid with him as I have been in previous races. And I do just want to put on record that, people think that I enjoy bagging on Perez. That is absolutely the case. But on this occasion, I don't think that he should get all of the blame for this.
A surprisingly diplomatic response there, I must say. You've taken me back a bit. But yeah, no, thanks. And I think you made a good point, actually, just to add my own opinion. I think you made a good point that, Red Bull should have considered that. And for a team that we praised the strategy, that was very, very Ferrari of them. But there we are. Also, that car should be through anyway. Yeah, lots to digest there, but we move on. Owain, Williams, they promised quite a lot this weekend. Ultimately, you could argue perhaps under-delivered. Logan Sargent P14, the last of the runners, if you like, in Q2. And then Albon, after people speculating, oh my God, he's actually going to be on pole. No, he's P8. But do you think that Williams can carry this quality pace through to the race much? I think they can maybe even get double points.
I think Albon definitely can carry that through. Sargent, I feel bad for Sargent, because obviously he's not got obviously the most unenviable teammate comparison in the sport, but he has got someone who's driven a number of F1 cars, has got a decent amount of experience, and he's coming in as a rookie, and he's performing decently well, but the spread between the two is quite high. The only one that's higher is Perez and Verstappen. And we all know why that is. I feel like I do feel Sargent has done a fairly decent job, but I can't help thinking that Bottas probably would have outqualified him, so he'd probably be a bit further down had Bottas completed the session. That said, he's not too far off. I could easily see a couple of drivers coming together in front of him, or doing bad strategies. I mean, if we have mixed conditions, it's entirely possible that we could get people making terrible decisions going off. Ferrari are always the threat, I find, right now with the strategy. Like they could easily go backwards. Throwing someone on hards the moment they can think they could. We have a wet start tomorrow. They immediately throw someone on hards, thinking, oh yeah, that'll be the tire to switch to, and obviously it would go terribly. But yeah, I think he can do it. I think, unfortunately, we're just under half a season through now, and Sargent's kind of starting to find his feet. But unfortunately, he's got a comparison with Albon, who's kind of showing everyone how it's done. So, I think he could do well, but I don't think it's entirely likely.
Yeah, Logan Sargent does have a tough ask around his hands, because, as we know, his teammate is, it just shows some real pace. That Williams is definitely looking good. And let's not forget, Logan is a rookie, like you rightly said. But yes, we'll see what tomorrow brings, and also let's bank on that Haas going backwards. So I'll give him a place by about lap 6. Just looking a little bit further ahead now, Jawad, we have the Alpine drivers. They finished. Gasly got into the top 10. He qualified P10. He was 9/10 slower than Max in the end. Then Esteban Ocon, he went out in Q2 after not really being able to set a lap at the end. He has been summoned for impeding car 24. I can't think who car 24 is off the top of my head.
Joe.
Joe, thank you very much. Yes, sorry. Yes. So at the moment it's a P10 and a P13. It could be that, if he gets done for impeding, that could be a 3 or 5 place grid drop. So there's a bit of an asterisk over that. But at the time of recording, it's P10, P13. Alpine, a bit of a weird one this year. Do you think they can work their way into the points? Because they've had some really good finishes, but they've had some really low races this year.
Yeah, they have, and they sort of go anonymously, I feel, and I think they're one of the teams who have a better race car than they do qualifying car. But Ocon just had a horrid time in qualifying. Obviously, we talked about Joe getting stuck with him, but also if you remember, him and Lance Stroll were fighting for the same piece of track in Q2. So, both those guys, I think, or did Stroll end up out of Q2? Yes, he did. So both those guys ending up outside of Q2 at the end. But yeah, Gasly snuck in basically, by the skin of his teeth and went 10th fastest to the end. So, not the greatest sort of day for them when you look at, their immediate constructors championship rivals where they qualified a bit further up the grid. But, I feel, they might have something for the race tomorrow, but, it's Alpine. It's a team. Yeah, you kind of blink and you miss them. But, if something goes wrong, then we'll be all over them.
Yeah, Alpine are sort of like in that Alfa Romeo minus the incoming takeover position. They're sort of just there, and sometimes they do great, and sometimes they do not that good. Just to bring you a quick update as well, something that has come about since we've been recording. Valtteri Bottas has been referred to the stewards. Just to update everybody, he's been referred to the stewards because the FIA were unable to take a 1 litre fuel sample plus the amount required to get back or to complete the lap. So as we all know, especially from Hungary 2021 with Seb, the FIA at any point can request a 1 litre fuel sample, and they do this quite often. Looking at the report, the FIA were only able to extract 0.09 litres. So that's quite a way below the 1 litre that they require. Nothing is confirmed yet, but that looks like it will likely be a disqualification for Bottas. So he'll probably end up with a pit lane start and lift Perez up to the lofty heights of P15. If we have confirmation of that before the end of the show, we will of course update you. But just back to the quality show. Who are we going to next, or who are we going back to? We are going back to Tom for the Aston Martins. So there was a lot of noise this weekend. Obviously, Aston Martin, they had a big sort of showing with lots of different road cars on the track and lots of pomp and circumstance. It kind of flopped a bit, really, because Lance Stroll went out in P12, just doing Lance Stroll things, over driving, then shouting on the radio, "Come on, man!" And then Fernando Alonso, after all the hype, pushing Max, to be something like 0.01 seconds behind him in Q1, only qualified P9 in the end. Almost a second off Verstappen. Do you think they can get double points tomorrow? Do you think this is just a bit of a blip for them, or do you think they've sort of fallen back after their start of season hype?
I do think they have a very strong chance of a double points finish tomorrow. Yeah, I think that they are kind of in that middle ground at the moment where they've nailed a good concept that has worked. They've bagged some early podiums. Fernando driving very well. Lance Stroll, not so much, but had some good performances in there. I was expecting him to be better today than he was, in all fairness to him. I think that it's difficult to say. I think Lance Stroll, his preparation for his final lap wasn't the greatest with the Ocon debacle and all that kind of stuff, but he still finished half a second off Alonso, which is not great. And given that the gaps between the rest of the field, it wasn't that long. Austria, I know it's a much shorter circuit, but less than a second covered the entire field. So to be over half a second behind your teammate is not great. But again, as I've already said, the preparation for the lap was not that great. So I think we can probably afford 2 or 3 tenths. He probably would have lost by not having a good enough run down into the first corner. So I think we can take that a bit of a pinch of salt. I think their race pace, they're going to be set up for the race. Absolutely. That's the way Fernando likes to do things. The qualifying has never been his absolute strongest point, but obviously still incredibly good. But he's always the guy that's there at the end of the race. We think back to last year at Silverstone when all that stuff was going down, and in an unfancied Alpine who was arriving on the scene when we had those 4 cars fighting, it was Fernando Alonso arriving at the back of it, potentially trying to scoop a podium out of nothing. Had a few cars collided. So I think we're going to see them moving forward in the race 100%. I think we're going to see I'm going to see a lot of green and orange in the points tomorrow. So I don't think it's alarm bells. I think they will get better. They've obviously I think someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but the aero ballast, success ballast type thing has now been reset, and they were P3, I think maybe at the time it was reset. So they now won't have an incredibly huge amount of aero time more than Red Bull for the rest of the season. But the stuff that they would have got in the pipeline in that first part of the season when they had all the extra time, they would have front loaded their development there, and that stuff will be coming onto the car soon. So I think they will develop, they will bring more to the car in the next, certainly after the summer break, there'll be some big upgrades coming to that car. And they've got some upgrades this weekend as well. But as we've seen from other teams that have bought upgrades, that doesn't always bear the strongest fruit. It upsets the balance of the car. But yes, with regards to this weekend, I think they very much are set up for the race. So I do think that Alonso will move forward in the race.
Yeah, and sort of historically, we've typically seen, I was going to say Team Enstone, that's the wrong one, Team Silverstone, quite literally their home race, the factory just across the road. We have historically seen them go better in race pace than we have in quali pace. Just as Perez, he brought it to Red Bull. Hopefully, I think especially with someone like Alonso, they'll probably get an electric start and be up to about P6. We hope, just so you don't stick a wheel up the inside of cops. Just ahead of them then, Jawad, we have both Mercedes P7 for Hamilton, P6 for Russell, or if I got that the wrong way round. No, I haven't. For once, I am right. I'm like a stop clock. There's a lot of hype around the upgrades, and Mercedes obviously have picked up their pace. I'd say, fairly significantly. Constantly in the top 10, pushing for podiums, all the rest of it. Do you think they could have got a bit more out of quality this weekend, or do you think this is about as far as they could have got?
I reckon, given what we saw in practice, this is probably as far as they would have gone. And yeah, like you say, there was a lot of hype about the upgrades this weekend and kind of fallen a bit flat because they did struggle, particularly with the rear end of their car in practice. I saw them, both cars get a bit untidy through Luffield, and then Hamilton, of course, having his mega world champion moment in Q1 quite early on. Thanks, because that's just stuck in my head now. So yeah, I feel like, given where they were, and yes, everyone turns up the modes for quali and whatnot, but I reckon genuinely on qualifying pace, this is where they are, and it's saying a lot when you've got Ferrari and McLaren ahead of you at this stage. So I reckon in race trim we'll see them up there or thereabouts. Interesting battle between Russell and Hamilton too. So obviously the Brits will be cheered on by the home crowd, but I think for them at the moment, their sort of battle is with Aston Martin, and they'll just want to finish ahead of both the green cars. So, we'll see.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of battle of the Brits in the whether it's teams or drivers in the top 10 this weekend. But Owain, just spoiling that battle, we've got the Italian intervention of Ferrari. They were one of the only teams to go out on inters in Q1, and then they promptly realised that that was not the right tire to be on. There was some real sort of like meow moments over the radio as well between Leclerc, Sainz, and the team. They seem to be swapping positions. Good Ferrari team orders, but they definitely don't have 1-2 drivers. No, definitely not. I mean, what do we even say about Ferrari by this point? Because one weekend they're like looking pretty strong, the next weekend they're just a meme. It's just like, where do they go from here?
They're just not comfortable. It doesn't seem. Things aren't sort of, the gears don't seem to be meshing in a certain way. Like, if you know what I mean, like the team doesn't look together. It doesn't look like a team. Which obviously they're gonna have to. They'll still be sort of readjusting of under Fred Vasseur even now. But it's not in the same way that the Red Bulls of the world are operating. It's not even in the same way that Aston Martin or you get the feeling that at McLaren, at Mercedes, at Aston Martin, they're all pulling in the same direction. Whether how successful they are is obviously clear to see by the championship order, but you just don't get that feeling with Ferrari, and they're just not. They've just got this lack of confidence that I think is holding them back a little bit. Going out on inters, not just we saw that, like in Q3, sorry, not Q3, in practice 3, we saw Leclerc trying out the inters, the softs on a wet track. Like, I think they got burned by the fact that what was it? I think it's Village. Went off at Village. I think there's a little bit of sort of, well, we'll do the safe option. We'll try and do the safe option, and I think they keep doing that on all they've done. And I think they've been mugged by McLaren. The McLaren seem to think they've got good race pace. We know that the Mercedes probably does, and as does the Aston Martin. And I can just see them just being swamped by teams tomorrow. Even if they do have good pace, I can see them going backwards. I don't know what's going on, and it's a hard job because you are, as Ferrari, sorry AlphaTauri, but you're holding up the sort of motorsport there's motorsport hopes of an entire nation. No team is subjected to that kind of scrutiny, and I understand that limelight has got to be understandably fierce, but I don't know what they need to do, but they need to change something to get just a modicum of success, because it's impacting their drivers, it's impacting their decisions, and it's costing them points ultimately. We're going back through another period of Ferrari just lack of success. I mean, the most successful Ferrari sort of challenges have come, 6 years ago now. It's kind of, I know it's kind of depressing in some ways, but I don't know what they can do. I don't see them going forward tomorrow. I feel foolish for predicting that they were going to be on the podium a week ago now. That's how I genuinely feel about them.
It was any consolation, mate. I also predicted last week that they'd be on the podium, and this week I wonder if they'll even be in the top 10. Excuse me, but who knows? Tomorrow we will find out. I'm sure it'll get dissected on the race show. Right, P3. We're going one by one on this. P1 won't take long because we don't know who it is. But I'm mixing up the order a little bit. Jawad, I'm coming to you for this one. Oscar Piastri, in his debut season for McLaren, when that car was a dog at the start of the year, is P3. First of all, let's talk about Oscar, and let's talk about that Australian seat. And you know exactly what I mean. As the resident Aussie of Good Talk, the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, what to say? I literally couldn't contain myself seeing him up so high through qualifying and then to end Q3 third fastest, a 10th off his teammate Lando Norris. It was a moment where, you know, a lot of emotion comes to mind. Like, I feel like I'm going to get carried away with this, but, you know, given all the acrimony that we've had around that McLaren seat over the last, you know, couple of years with Daniel Ricciardo, and then the way he was let go from the team and Oscar was signed to the team, I feel like this was a moment of vindication where, you know, McLaren knew what they were doing by putting someone of Piastri's caliber in the car. And yes, you know, we all love Ricciardo. Everyone will admit that they're a fan of his, but he was done. You know, I'm convinced that with the car that they have now, he still would not be able to come to the lofty heights that we've seen McLaren perform this weekend. But for whatever reason, there are people in some corners who still are convinced that, oh, you know, McLaren, you know, you did Dan dirty, you did this, you did that. It's like, well, you know what? Perhaps this is what the team needed to move on. And to have two drivers, you know, consistently qualifying close to each other. Yes, last weekend was a bit tough for Oscar because he didn't have the upgrades that Lando did. And there were people who savaged him after the race that he finished second last. It was also because he got involved in an incident on the opening lap, lost his front wing and had to pit for damage and couldn't recover from that. So, you know, I feel like Oscar's doing all the right things. Yes, it isn't talked about as much, you know, as we were hearing about Ricciardo last year, but that's the way he's got to carry on, I think, until, you know, McLaren get to where they're going. And, you know, yes, I was a bit skeptical too a few races ago after the first lot of upgrades came in Baku, and it was like, they're not really making too much headway. But then this most recent package that they've introduced in Austria, wow, you know, like to gain the time that they've had, and also a circuit like Silverstone, which is, you know, a mix of all different corners, high speed, low speed, to be quicker than the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari in qualifying, and not even wet qualifying either, is something that, yeah, we all have to sort of sit back and be like, whoa, you know, perhaps, you know, this midfield battle, or even probably not for second or third, but yeah, you know, the midfield is going to be a lot closer than we thought. But for Oscar, it's just a big moment because, you know, this is a driver who through the junior formula was hyped up. Of course, his appointment into F1 was controversial with the whole contract saga with Alpine. But, you know, I feel like for all the flack that Zach Brown cops, he'll be sitting there tonight after qualifying with a big grin on his face, because he'll be like, see, I knew what we were doing all along if other people didn't think that. And hats off to Andrea Stella as well, new team principal, stepping into the shoes of Andreas Seidel. Underrated, I think, but, you know, he's been making all the right noises too this season. So, you know, let's just sit back, see what happens. I'm sure, you know, if they have a dismal race and both cars don't finish, you know, we'll be all over them again. But, you know, for what it is, it's really good to see, and I'm really happy for Oscar as well, because, you know, a driver of his caliber deserves the success that he's had, and hopefully much more success to come his way in a McLaren.
Yeah, and to be honest, you've echoed everything that I certainly said in the live chat when we were watching quali. Daniel Ricciardo would have been P13 in that car, whilst his teammate was P3, or, you know, P2, whatever. How many times did we see that over the last 2 years? And it's, Danny won a race. Yeah, but Lando should have won that, and McLaren has let him win it, so they had to get some return on their investment. But yeah, very well said, Jawad. I was always going to give that one to you today. But P2, I think if anybody who's watching this live, looking at the way some of our panelists are dressed, there's only one person this is going to go to, and it's not me. It is indeed Tom Horrox, who has the OBS background ready. Mr. Lando Norris, P2 in that McLaren. P2, a McLaren 2-3, after the start of the year when they were topping up his hydraulic fluid about every 10 laps. What a turnaround. Away you go.
Absolutely fantastic. And I was going to say, I don't know the last time I cheered that loud in front of a telly was when I thought he was on pole because I forgot about the little thing of Max Verstappen behind. And then I remembered exactly when it was. It was in the Russian Grand Prix qualifying in 2021. That's the last time I cheered that loud. I've busted the hat out for the first time since 2021. I don't wear baseball caps very often because they don't suit me. But today I am fully rocking McLaren. Now I'll try and keep this brief because I'm conscious of the time and I want to make sure that we that we don't just go on for hours and hours and hours. But Jawad absolutely, covered everything I was going to say about McLaren and fully deserved. But what I will temper this with is how impressive was Oscar Piastri. 10th of a second of Lando Norris in that car. And I don't believe he's got all the same bits that Lando's got either. So that's just absolutely phenomenal. So yes, obviously I'm overjoyed with the 2-3 McLaren, Lando Norris being my favorite driver. Fantastic. Shows just how well he's doing. But I doff my cap to Oscar Piastri as well. An amazing team performance. I don't think it's going to last. I think the Ferraris and the Mercedes are going to have far better race pace than the McLarens. But strong points for the McLaren in that fight with Alpine. Alpine, looking sort of 10th, 13th in the midfield there, not looking great. I mean, they could get some points finishes, but McLaren are likely to vastly outscore Alpine. And then that fight that seemingly was never on a few races ago is now really hotted up. So, yeah, I'm a very happy man tonight, and I may even crack open a glass of sherry or something to celebrate. You never know.
You can really tell where you're from, can't you? Cracking up in a glass of sherry, blinking egg. Yeah, round by me would be a bottle of white lightning from Tesco. But yes, I mean, I would love to sit here and wax lyrical all day about McLaren. But there's a small matter of a rampant bull in P1. Oh, just quickly, Max P1. Anything to add, or just the Verstappen freight train continues?
Oh, he did a bang up job, didn't he? I mean, look at him. Like, I think the best way I can put it is, I was talking about it just before we came on air, is if you look at the gaps between everyone else in that top 10 shootout, and they're covered by a second, a quarter of that gap though comes from Max Verstappen going a quarter of a second quicker than anyone else. He's some of it's the car, but as Ricciardo has proved, you can put them in the wrong car and they start thinking about it. They start having to think about driving the car. They go and they can go backwards. That car is perfectly set up around him. They're doing a bang up job, and he's done a bang up job. He just whacked it on pole. I can't say more than that, because he's done it. He's done a great job.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to add. He's done what everybody expected, and I think if he wasn't P1, it would probably be considered a failure, certainly in that car. But yes, that is our roundup of, or our sort of review of the 2023 British Grand Prix qualifying. I just want to give each of you a quick chance to promo any socials, and anything that you want to promo, and just keep it clean. So first of all, Jawad, where can we find you? What do you do? Who are you? Hello.
I don't even know who I am anymore. But anyway, hit the Apex podcast, talk F1 and the Supercars Championship here. You can find that on all the good podcast platforms, and Twitter account at Hit the Apex Media. And I also write for and do F1 live blogs for this website called The Raw as well. So you can all find that through the link tree on the Twitter account.
Lovely stuff, thank you. Tom, as people may be able to tell by the branding on your screen, are you part of Grid Talk by any chance?
I might be, yeah. I do a little bit for Grid Talk here and there, just every now and then, like today. Yeah, you can catch us, obviously, the shows on Grid Talk, the Fireside episodes I do quite a lot of as well when we do them, when we don't have 70 races a season, so we can actually fit in additional podcasts. But, when you have sprint races and 4 podcasts a week, there's no point squeezing in interviews here and there, because we all have lives. Also do the Monkey Seat, which is at Monkey Seat Pod on the socials, where you hear my co-host Cole just digging into George Russell all the time, and me digging into Sergio Perez. And we occasionally talk nice things as well. So, give us a shout.
Yeah, definitely check them out. I've been on once or twice, and it's basically if you want an explicit version with no holes barred, that's where you go. And Owain, I refer to you as the engineering marvel earlier, but you are also indeed a co-host of Grid Talk alongside myself and Tom, and obviously all our other lovely co-hosts. Anything else you want to give a plug for?
Nothing to report.
Fair enough. And just myself, obviously a part of Grid Talk. I also co-host when I'm not having a rather torrid personal week. I also co-host the Formula Talk show, which is thought of by Sophia. So you can find that wherever you find Grid Talk. And if you want to find me personally, I can't be about to say this. My Instagram and Threads thing is at ChungusHumongous94. That is a nickname that has stuck. So yes, you can find me on Threads and Instagram if you want to. I don't have Twitter, and I never will, especially given it's going down the pan. As Owen furiously Googles my username. So yes, it's all right. Predictive text does me dirty quite a lot, mate. It's all good. But yes, chaps, just like to thank you all for attending as always. It's always good fun having you lot on. And just a quick bit of housekeeping. Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Casts. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows, with previews and reactions to both qualifying and race results. You can even throw in a cheeky little sprint there as well these days. Please also consider supporting the channel on Patreon so we can get mics, lights, and better recording equipment, which came about for Grid Talk Live last week, as some of you may have seen. Also, please make sure you subscribe so you're the first to know when each new episode is released. We do say weekly, but at the minute it's borderline daily because there's so much F1 on, especially if it's a back-to-back sprint weekend or something. Finally, we will be back soon, tomorrow to be precise, with plenty more fun content, where we will be reviewing the Brazilian, no, not that far, the British Grand Prix. Thank you very much to everyone for listening and indeed watching. You've been consuming the Good Talk podcast presented by Bet Online, and goodbye. If I could not swallow my tongue, that'd be handy.
For you.
Behave. We're still live, by the way, because we're moving into a little post show.
It's called Threads, Tom. It's called Threads.
That's it. I keep calling it trends, don't I? But that's not right.
No, that's a thing on Twitter.
Yeah, ironically, yes.
Can imagine the lawsuit if they tried calling it trends.
Can they just call it Twitter? Can they just call it Twitter, and then like the actual Twitter won't have enough money to fight that? Or if
Yeah.
Isn't there supposed to be some boxing match actually between those two?
Oh, it's meant to be a well, they call it a cage fight.
Yeah,
but it's
cage
meant
fight.
to be an MMA match.
God.
But apparently it's been stopped because Elon Musk's mum doesn't want him to do it.
Yeah, because Elon Musk will get sparked out.
Yeah, because Mark Zuckerberg holds a belt in jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu is not about like there's no grading for the belt to be on. Like it's just you have to be a certain age to get a certain belt. Full stop. So jiu-jitsu, you don't mess about. It's let's use another phrase then, but yeah, I'm not going to because we are still live. So we have some comments. So Ruby, lovely to see you in the chat, my friend. So she said if Max Verstappen could just not for one weekend, Lando. I mean, yeah, I think even as a Max fan, I kind of echo those sentiments. And one of you, I can't remember who it was, said in the live chat that if Max wasn't here, this would have been one of the qualities of the season as Tom lets the cat in. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I know. As a cat dad, I do exactly the same thing. Yeah, so yeah, it's imagine if that would have been a shootout for pole. That would have been something. And imagine a McLaren 1-2 at Silverstone. I would still be screaming now, and you'd be able to hear me from South Wales.
Yeah, it was a shootout for pole, but yeah, if Lando was in pole until right at death.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, yeah, I semi sort of called it. I said it's going to be who goes last is going to be the one who gets that high up. Aside from Max, really, and it was indeed. But
speaking of who goes last, why was Perez allowed to sit at the end of the pit lane for 11 minutes?
It's a joke. That's what I was saying. I don't completely blame Perez unless it was his call and he said, "No, I want to be first out." And if it was his call, he deserves everything he gets. But
yeah, but
I don't understand. I don't understand how the team even fathomed that was a good idea.
Yeah.
Red Bull don't make those kind of mistakes. Hannah Schmidt wouldn't have allowed that.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's the kind of thing where you'd have thought if Perez insisted on sitting at the end of the pit lane, his engineer or whoever would have said, no, you stay there with the tyre warmers on. You got enough time to do 2 warm-up laps. Because he sat there for something like 11 minutes and she lost so much tyre temp. He ended up losing tyre pressure, which
I can have a shower in that time.
So, yeah. We could, I could race quit 3 games of F1 in that time, So it's
things I've got a new game. It's things you could do while Perez was sat at the end of the pit lane.
I'm not answering that.
Keep it clean.
Make lunch. I could make lunch in that.
Well, I was just thinking I could put a pasta bake in the oven.
Yeah, that's a PG version of.
Could you get a game of Rocket League in?
You've seen how bad MF1. I would be all for the Rocket League. But yeah, no, it is just bizarre, and Ruby and a few others in chat have made a good point that it's just like, and Tom, you've raised it very well in the show that it's odd that he was allowed to sit there for so long because we didn't know how long that red flag period was going to be. If they'd have known there was going to be 3 minutes, 4 minutes, but we didn't even have the thing to say session resumes. England had just scored. England is cut. Oh no, wait, that's the seniors.
I'm the only English person on this panel, aren't I?
No, I am.
Just
because I got a Welsh name doesn't mean I'm not English.
You sound Welsh, but come on, you should.
I don't know. You always sound the same to me.
Well, now you know how I feel the first time I came to Berkshire, wherever you're from. Yeah, but yeah, no, it's it's just bizarre that he was allowed to sit in the pit lane for that long. But hey ho.
I bet those tyres, by the time that he fired it up, they were probably better used as pencil erasers.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Do you know what? Something which I didn't think to mention at the time on the show, and I can't believe I didn't think of this, and Ruby even messaged me beforehand. Tom, have you got a sombrero? Because you might need to be handing it to George at this rate.
Yeah, no, I don't have a sombrero. I have one in my Amazon wish list basket ready for such occasion, but I feel I will be deleting that list.
I got to be honest. After Austria, I thought, oh, get your sombrero ready, but then after today, I'm like, nah, he can stay there.
Nah. I mean, even that performance in Austria wasn't that great. It was okay, but it was the minimum you should do in that car.
All right, okay. Let's put you in it, see what happens.
I'm not an elite athlete.
Neither am I, trust me.
It was interesting, actually, hearing Philip Matthew in the live chat saying the curse of the second Red Bull car, basically how Mark Webber had it back in the day. It seems to have carried over to Checo, except for 2014, the year that Daniel Ricciardo wiped the floor with Seb. And then I pointed out that actually then the year after, Danny Kvyat actually outscored Ricciardo in the same car too. Yeah, we'd never talk about that.
Well, and then what happened after that? Oh yeah, a small person called Max Verstappen came along, and the rest is history.
Ricciardo outscored Verstappen in the first year together as well. We can't forget that.
Oh yeah. Someone's been red carded in the football, by the way. Don't know who.
It looks like one of the England coaching staff.
Yeah, there's a bit of fisticuffs.
They're Spanish, they're annoyed they've been scored against.
Yeah, that's right. They'll probably go on strike over Siesta soon. And there goes our Spanish audience. Yeah, Ruby said it's called Threads. Yeah, that's the one. Thank you, Ruby. Ruby said, what do we think of the Haas qualifying today? Well, pretty dire. And quality has been a strong point, as we talked about.
I mean, Hulkenberg's qualified 11th.
Yeah, Hulkenberg has put in good qualifying performances this year, to be fair. But it's just, they're just very, very up and down, aren't they, Haas? They're so inconsistent. They're consistently inconsistent, to be fair.
I find the problem with Haas is that they go backwards over the course of the season. So they're kind of like Aston Martin, but without the Aston Martin's initial pace at the start of the season.
Yeah, they're like Aston Martin, but their pace is in quality and not in the race. So yeah, it's all right. Here's one for you. I should have probably asked this in the show, but I've just thought of it now. Can McLaren win tomorrow?
No.
Okay.
I would love to say yes, but you know what? I can see this being another Russia 21 race. Lando takes the lead, a little bit of rain in the air, Verstappen and Piastri come together or something like that, and then there's a big gap behind, gradually getting closed down, and then like something happens at the end and Norris misses out. I can see it happening. I don't think they got a chance of winning the race, but
especially if it starts to rain.
But I will be quite annoyed if they do, given I can't watch the race live.
That's all right. I'll text you.
Better not do.
Language.
I said better not do. It's fine.
Yeah. Good save. That good save. Yeah.
I did
race in a row where there'll be orange flares being let off.
Yeah, although I don't think they'll be for Max fans this weekend. Certainly lasted a couple of years ago. Yes, so let's just have a flick through some more comments. JM in the chat, whoever that is, Tommy Boy teach these boys a lesson. I don't know who that is, but hello. Nice to meet you. And unless it's for you, Tom. Oh yeah, you said which one. Ruby Hassel finished P19, P20, and says retirement. Nick DeVries allowed me to introduce myself. Sonoda to get a penalty. Yeah. JM, Tom Downey, do you bet on F1? I do not. I don't bet on anything, to be honest. Life's enough of a lottery as it is. Yeah, we got quite a few comments here today. There's somebody in here called Just Another Channel. I'm gonna get my burrito. That must have been when we were talking about Perez. Ruby, can Williams get double points? Do you think? I know we talked about it, but do you reckon Sargent could sneak like a P10?
Yeah.
If it's attritional.
I think my bold prediction was going to be Sargent for points, but Philip Matthew got that from me on the Great Britain preview, so I went with Nick DeVries to get points just because. Why not? But yeah, no, I genuinely think Sargent could be in with a chance of points. I thought that before the race weekend, and I still think it now.
Yeah. Yeah, that car's looking good, and I think Sargent kind of needs it for himself. So yeah. Ruby said Alpine are slow average on a Saturday, but on Sunday they tend to have good race pace. Except Ocon's different Austria track layout. Yeah. Jawad, I completely forgot about his Christmas wish list of penalties from Austria.
It was ridiculous, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How many 8 or 9 penalties that he got just on his own?
I don't know, but he was basically driving his own layout by that point.
Dear Santa, for Christmas, I would like.
I would like a 30-second penalty to walk on. Ruby said Aston do Aston things to tend to fall back mid-season. They do indeed. And we saw that. And also, they do tend to have better race paces. We've seen. Ruby, was that one satire? Probably. I can't remember what that was about, but yeah, probably satire. And then, a lot of hype from Mercedes upgrades when they were putting themselves to the front. Yeah, kind of forgot they had upgrades because they didn't, yes, they had good pace. So I think that was also partly down to the track rubbering in. So, I don't know. And then, just more comments. Ruby, I think that probably is Ruby anyway. McLaren Magic today, absolutely. I mean, I know we talked about it on the main show, but if you'd have told us in Bahrain that, 10 or so races later, we'll be looking at McLaren 2-3 in quali with the chrome livery. You know, it'd have been like, pinch me, have we gone back 10 years? Is this 2013, 2012?
Hmm.
It was like it's like Mercedes last season. It was just like, what? How were they so bad? And then they came out.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know where that McLaren piece has come from, but I'm all here for it.
It's come from the wind tunnel.
Yeah, and yeah, you know, especially after they get more time last year. Yeah, Ruby's still in the channel. I can read every one of hers. As much as I love you, Ruby. Yeah. George, yes, Buckinghamshire, that famous part of Wales. Yeah, and then George said, I thought I passed Wales on the way down to Silverstone. You know, now I actually did, because you drove to Buckinghamshire. Absolutely.
You can't pass Buckinghamshire to get down to Silverstone.
Did you? You didn't get the joke.
I got it. It's fine, but it can't be done. Like, you have to go. Like, it's just not what happens.
Yeah, sure. And then here we are, Tom. You know, some sombrero chat. All it takes is a good race. Wait for Singapore. # King of the Streets.
King of the Streets. Really? If you actually look at his record in detail on the street circuits, when he's in a dominant car, he sometimes does a little bit better than Max Verstappen on street circuits. He's not actually that great on street circuits. Go back and look at the amount of street circuits where he's underperformed is still quite high. He's not the king of the streets. Stuff tends to happen on street tracks, and he has happened to be there when that has happened. He's not the king of the streets.
Yeah, that's a skill. That's driver skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pure RNG. Do you mean like bottling it 2 years in a row in Monaco qualifying?
Well, yeah,
King of the Streets.
Yeah.
I like Perez, but yeah, come on, I don't even know who gave him that.
It's like the SpongeBob meme, innit?
Yeah,
King of the Streets.
Yeah. And yeah, George said in 2016 Max was a little child though, so he could be forgiven for being beaten by Ricardo. And okay, yeah, he was 18, but yes,
yeah, of course, it wouldn't happen now. I'm not saying Ricardo would beat Verstappen now, because he couldn't even do it in 2019, let alone in 2023.
Max would wipe the floor with Ricardo.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably to a similar level that Perez has been destroyed.
Yeah, I think it would be worse, but yeah.
Because are you allowed to be Australian in the Red Bull team?
No, as we learned with Mark Webber.
You're not even allowed to be Dutch in the Red Bull outfit at the minute. Just look at De Vries. You know, it's just that Red Bull are just going to be a one-car team suit, and as we've seen, they would still be leading the championship constructors. So, right,
see, like I think that's a telling point, though. What you said about Ricardo, that he would be having the floor white with him too at the moment, which, you know, given all the talk about, if they sack Perez, they should put Ricardo in. Is it going to be any different to what we've got now? Yeah. So
I think his race pace would be better.
You have to have the adjustment period. I mean, he's in the simulator, so yeah, there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, but simulator versus actual track time, and not.
Of course, I'm not saying that they're anywhere applicable, but
I don't know, mate. Yeah, it's just.
Yeah. I'm just not buying the hype of putting him back in the Red Bull.
He's done.
We could say, yeah.
Sorry, mate. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, if we could have this conversation for ages, but in hindsight, you could say he shouldn't have left in the first place. He got a bit too greedy, wanted the cash, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, and then bye, Felicia.
Speaking of getting greedy and wanting the cash, I think that Piastri is just with this performance and everything that's happened so far. Because I think Alpine were probably laughing to themselves earlier in the year when McLaren was sort of last. They were like, "Wow, we dodged a bullet there. That's karma for you messing us about." And now,
they're like, "Oscar, please, yeah.
Come back." Yeah.
Nah.
I think that's a similar level call. I think we've said it before, but Piastri made the right call doing what he's done now.
Yeah, it's we talked about it earlier, and we talked about it when it happened. Alpine just massively dropped the ball on that one, and they, they realised that they'd been absolutely played, and Piastri played them like a violin. Never mind violin, he played them like an entire orchestra. With a full percussion section and a full Mahler brass section with 4 trombones, 6 trumpets, and a double percussion section. And yes, I'm a music nerd, and that makes sense to me and probably about 3 other people. But yeah, he has absolutely played them royally there. And Alpine were just annoyed because they realised it's their own mistake and they lost a damn good driver. And they just got salty about it.
And £4 million quid.
Yeah, they lost. If you think about it, they lost 2 drivers because they let Alonso go as well because they didn't want to give him a long-term contract. So
yeah, because Alonso's definitely washed up. Look at him in Aston Martin. Oh.
Yeah,
I don't think Piastri actively went out there to screw Alpine. I think that was just one of those things where he was in a position where he didn't have
Alpine just happened to get screwed.
Yeah, he wasn't there like he's saying, "Oh, this will mess him up." It was a case that he didn't have a guaranteed drive. He had he had agreed to like an intention to stay with the team, but nothing was signed, nothing was guaranteed. And then McLaren came knocking. He was under no obligation to inform Alpine of that, and so he signed a deal with them, and that was the choice he made. He was perfectly within his right to make that decision, in my opinion. Anyway, I don't like the fact he's been vilified for this because I guarantee you, if that was, it's in the reverse scenario. It's like if you like what Aston Martin did to get Fernando Alonso. It's the exact opposite. Nobody was vilifying Aston Martin. They're saying what a great coup they've got Fernando Alonso, but it's the exact same. It's the opposite way around, but it's the same thing. So I don't think Piastri did anything wrong at all. I mean, of course, I'm going to say that given the show.
Not at all. But yeah, it's a classic case of mismanagement by Alpine. And, the same people are still in charge today. And, look at where they are.
And if they say loyalty, it doesn't show good loyalty. If Piastri got put in that car and he was underperforming, they would drop him like a sack of spuds. There'll be no loyalty there.
No.
So loyalty works both ways. And they weren't showing loyalty to him by him doing everything that they asked him to do, and then still not giving him a Formula One drive, which was not
or trying to shove him or trying to shove him down at Williams.
Yeah,
which actually would still be a better option. I'd still rather be in the Williams than the Alpine right now.
That 4-year contract for Ocon is what ruined Alpine. That was a stupid deal. That was a stupid deal to sign in the first place, and. I think that's what lost them. They would have Alonso and Piastri in that team right now if they hadn't signed that deal with Ocon.
Here's one for you. We've talked a lot about De Vries, and I'm just conscious of time as well. De Vries, there's been a lot of talk about obviously he's got now 3 races to save his career. He's definitely doing himself a lot of favors at the minute. If he'd have stuck in that Williams, do you think we'd be having this conversation about him?
If it's him and Albon, I think he's probably doing better than Sargent is right now because just his experience. But I don't think he wouldn't be a match for Albon.
I don't think he'd be a match. I think it'd be better for I think it's better for his career prospects to be in the Williams with the way Williams seem to be going.
Yeah, and I think it's if he's in that Williams, we're talking about how amazing Alex Albon is to be putting Nick De Vries into shade, someone who's a series world champion of Formula E and won Formula 2 and all this experience, and Albon is putting him to bed. I think that's the conversation we'd be having about Alex Albon, not about Nick De Vries.
Absolutely.
All right, gentlemen. Right.
Just one more thing. There's been a decision on the Ocon and on Ocon being impeded by Zhou.
It says decision, so that generally means nothing.
Yeah, there's no further action.
It's a bit of an anticlimax.
Yeah, apparently, essentially what happened was that Zhou explained that he was driving slowly because he had... What was it? He had to go slow to avoid Hamilton in front of him. Had to stay on the left-hand side of the track because, as he entered the turn, he was passed on the right. As he was passed on the rights by Bottas and couldn't have moved off the line without creating an unsafe situation. And the FIA agree with that by looking at his in-car camera.
To be honest, I think that's fair. because unless he was going to drive onto the grass, which he's not going to do.
Well, the safety has to be the highest thing.
And he did the right thing by going where he did. Yes, he didn't impede the driver, and that's unfortunate. But it would have been a lot safer than sitting on the racing line to let someone go past.
It's kind of like when you move over to let an ambulance by, like, or a police car. Like, there's at a certain point, it's just like, yes, there's times where unfortunately you can't do anything, even though you'd like to. You can't do anything because you just can't get out of the way safely.
Yeah, I do think common sense has kicked in.
For once.
For once, it's finally happened.
Note it down.
So yeah,
it's happened a lot. It's happened more recently a lot.
Yeah. Oh wow, my Sky renewal's just come in. I'm not paying that. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous.
How much is it?
£104 a month.
Wait, is that just for the TV package?
That's all Sky Sports HD, 4K, and then BT Sport.
Oh, right. I mean, mine's 122, but that includes a £55 a month broadband connection.
Yeah, this doesn't include broadband. I will be ringing them. But yes, thank you everybody. Oh yeah, Tom, one more thing. George said Tom Horrox is sweating pure deflection there. He's right. So yeah,
no, it's raining. It's raining.
Oh, that's
only on his head.
Yeah. It's coming from the inside of his cap. Yeah. Right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, everybody who has been listening, commenting live. I've just figured out who that's. Just another channel. That's Aiden, because it's got the same picture as what he's got in the Zoom call. I've just put two and two together. So yes. Thank you, everybody, for interacting. Thank you lot for being here. Aiden, thank you for running things behind the scenes, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.